sort of, kind of elaborating on them and reinventing them, restating, reformulating. Right, sorry. So you had something to say, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed, I mean, this is about primal rights. It's like about going back and digging in and really, I mean, people were always the same. And so they wrote about it, even if it's like Sumerian or, other literature. But here, I mean, 20th century literature, I mean, I'm just like, I want you to say something about our writers in Pakistan, what's going on right now. I mean, can I really write an internal monologue in this day and age? Or should I really keep on going at what is unreadable? I mean, see,
Are you referring to Pakistani writing?
yeah, I just basically, want to say I do understand that, it's about primal rights, fiction.
No, why? Sorry, may I just interrupt you? Primal Rites is just about. Basically, I called it that because it's about the way there was a sort of bit of wordplay there on rights and rights, okay? But it was also about an initiation. I have been teaching creative writing in a very special kind of way. I have initiated my student sitting on my right is Robin Mitta. We have initiated our students in a special kind of way into fiction. And this was our way in. I mean, one has to think of various strategies, teaching strategies, strategies of instruction. And this was one of our ways in to the world of fiction. Because what I'm trying to say, I ended up on a special note about the moment of writing. And I'm going to read you a few passages from Rushdie, from David Copperfield and so on, to tell you what's happening. This assault on time and death, the feeling of overcoming. There's something underlying, all right, the better writing. It has to do with an assault, it has to do with a fear and of extinction somewhere, and this expressed need, in the case of Iris Murdoch particularly, a desire for self-perpetuation, self-preservation. That's there. But as far as your question was about writing a monologue, you said, why did you...
Yeah, internal monologue. I mean, it just comes naturally to me. I mean...
Okay, that's fine, because...
I just wanted to ask
no, I understand. I would welcome any kind of, if you're interested in joining a course, you're welcome to, because I'm conducting a creative writing course separately. Anyway, he's one of my students. We have a number of other students. I would like to say here, Salinger, whom I'm going to be talking about, has written a monologue, and very effectively. There's so many novels that are full of sort of action-packed extravaganzas. To me, that's not really fiction of a very significant kind. To me, happenings, events, and action don't count for so much as the inner lives of characters. The inner lives of characters are far more important to me, and their thoughts, their reflections. Our writers are not getting involved in this at all, unfortunately.
That is great. I mean, it's good to know I have like...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm like a part.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I have a marketplace. Anyway, so I just basically want to...
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
I don't like dialogue. I don't like putting...
I don't think you should resist dialogue, because I think bits of dialogue are always very important in writing. You can't get it, because that's part of our life. And we are supposed to be representing our own reality. Now, I would like to say here, if you'll all bear with me for a moment, about current writing in Pakistan. Somewhere, I get the feeling that a lot of it is formula-based. It's formulaic. And they're all more or less market-driven writers. Our writers are often market-driven. Fine, I have no problems. I mean, they're welcome to be that. Everybody wants to get published. But to me, writing is not about arriving, as one writer said to me. I will not name him. He said, I have arrived. And that is not a statement any artist makes. You do not arrive in literature. You never arrive. It's an you haven't published or 10, but you do not make that statement or even believe that for a moment. It's not about fame either. It's not, maybe that's there somewhere, but that should not be the prime purpose of the exercise. The prime purpose should be to reach out with your individual experience and statement in fiction. That to me is of the essence again. That's very important.
So it's like, I mean, I'm basically getting a go-ahead from you.
Yes,
that I
yes,
should just
absolutely.
follow my own.
Absolutely, because this business, I mean, lots of people start off these days with stuff about 9/11. There's a lot of stuff written about 9/11. There's always some kind of catastrophic kind of event at the start of a novel because that's the way, you know, the reader wants it these days. I'm sorry, I'm not going to go along with that at all. I'm not interested in formulas. I'm not interested in canned fiction.
Sorry.
Canned fiction. A lot of fiction is being canned for the West. And a lot of fiction does not have anything to do with Pakistani reality as we know it. A lot of fiction also, apart from focusing on the Taliban, our writers are avoiding confronting the political scene here in Pakistan, the socio-political realities of Pakistan. A lot of writers are just not doing that. And I think that's a shame because they're writing what the West wants to hear from them. And they're presenting their version of Pakistan that doesn't really exist as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I would apply this even to a better writer who's written quite a good novel, but she's gone and spoiled it somewhere by drawing on the Japanese experience, which has nothing to do with the Pakistani experience. So these are all reservations I have about, I mean, I think well of the writers concerned. They write well, they are gifted, they're lucid. I mean, Mohsin Hamid is a lucid, good writer, but his writing is often formula-based. The Reluctant Fundamentalist was certainly formula-based. Sorry, would you like to?
May I make a very small observation in relation to the same thing? It's not just about, I mean, 9/11 today, or 7/11 or 57/11, I don't know. Tomorrow, nobody's going to remember the goddamn numbers. But life, love, death, pain, these are eternal themes. They're always going to be there. The archetypes, as you rightly said, are all there. Fiction is not about just today. Fiction overcomes.
It's about all time.
It's about all time. It overcomes death and time. Shakespeare said it. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate, and so on and so forth. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, I just got the idea that, I mean, to spoil the whole thing, that's something else I wanted to discuss, you know, like you just are, how do you know, you're like basically going to spoil, like I was writing a short story. It turns out to be 14,000 words now, and it's like moving into a novel. The whole thing is going to be an internal monologue. It's about the prayer, what you see in a prayer. Nobody's ever talked about it.
A monologue is fine providing it's not addressed inwards. A monologue is fine providing you're engaging with the reader and you're engaging the reader. It's very important to bear in mind that you have a reader.
If you have like
an imaginary reader. I mean, obviously everybody has a target readership. So you must have a reader in mind. You cannot be writing just, if you're writing for yourself, that's another matter. But I think it is extremely important to be writing outwards as though you're expressing, as though you're communicating with the reader. That must be apparent. Otherwise, you'll close your narrative. It'll be totally inaccessible. It'll become opaque. There is a writer I know who's written quite well, but it's a tapestry of words, and you cannot enter because they're just these words which are very forbidding, and you cannot get inside the novel. It's been written not so long ago, right?
I took some courses in like computer science, so I mean, I'm just like giving it away, but I mean, in networking, I basically saw certain protocols, certain ways. I mean, I'm just like, basically want to bring my science experience into this art experience, and I see the same thing happening in the prayer. Now, if I push that in, is that inaccessible? I mean, that's like very technical.
We will have to meet separately to discuss that issue, if you don't mind. Sure. If you can pass on your email to us, we'll be happy to be in touch with you, and we can have a talk about that at a later time. But I would like to move on now, if there are no other questions. Surely.
Sir.
As you put it, we are was saying, how are we being creative? Or how can we be creative?
Sorry, I can't hear the whole question.
If, as you put it, we are merely reproducing, how do you term it then creative writing?
All experience has happened, Rafi Raza Saab. All experience, it's all over.
Yeah.
We can, it's always been the case. Experience is always reformulated, restated. Love is not an original
There's nothing new.
emotion. No, obviously. So, but what is new is the way in which we formulate it. We reinvent all the time. And that's that's the way human expression goes. I mean, that's the way it is. So that is, yeah, fine. It providing it always remains, at least in appearance, prototypical. That is what distinguishes great writing from mediocre writing. It can become stereotypical. You understand, there's so much stereotypical stuff being produced. Then it's as far as I'm concerned, that's an exercise in futility. But if it's prototypical, if that prototypical encounter with the world is still present in the writing, you get a sense of that. That, I think, entitles it to be called writing, genuine literature. Surely, yeah. Can we make this the last question? I'd like to
yes,
move on.
please.
Okay.
Can you please make a distinction between a prototype and an archetype?
Yes, a prototype is what comes first, precedes archetypes. Prototypes are types that precede other types. An archetype is a governing type. Okay? So prototype, proto means former, first, and prototype comes before. It is the first type as such. But prototypes are endlessly recessive and they're going backwards. So there's no point at which you can say this was the prototype. You know, like Thomas Mann has written about Abraham and talks about an you are dash Abraham, which can be a figure who can have happened at any point in time. It's just a hypothetical prototype. Because it can have happened, you can't know, you cannot affix a date, you can't assign a date, okay? If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to a kind of initiation. I have mentioned the encounter with fiction as involving, at least in its first moments, ecstasy or euphoria, turmoil, and terror. Now I'm going to move on to read out a few openings of novels which suggest, which resonate in this kind of, which suggest some of these things. And they are relevant, and certainly what is relevant is David Copperfield's opening, which is very important because I will be relating that to Salinger. I don't believe you can come to Salinger until you have your David Copperfield before you, to start with. So I'm going to read out a short passage from the opening of David Copperfield. It's interesting how writers have changed, how the tone changes, how it varies from writer to writer, but somewhere there is this confrontation with death, with birth, and so on, and this need to overcome and transcend time. Can I have some water, please? This is the start of Copperfield. Whether I shall turn out to be the hero of my own life or whether that station will be held by anybody else, these pages must show. To begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born, as I have been informed and believe, on a Friday at 12 o'clock at night. It was remarked that the clock began to strike and I began to cry simultaneously. In consideration of the day and hour of my birth, it was declared by the nurse and by some sage women in the neighborhood who had taken a lively interest in me several months before there was any possibility of our becoming personally acquainted, first, that I was destined to be unlucky in life, and secondly, that I was privileged to see ghosts and spirits, both these gifts inevitably attaching, as they believe, to all unlucky infants of either gender born towards the small hours on a Friday night. I need say nothing more on the first head because nothing can show better than my history whether that prediction was verified or falsified by the result. On the second branch of the question, I will only remark that unless I ran through that part of my inheritance while I was still a baby, I have not come into it yet. But I do not at all complain of having been kept out of this property, and if anybody else should be in the present enjoyment of it, he is heartily welcome to keep it. I was born with a caul, which was advertised for sale in the newspapers at the low price of 15 guineas. Whether sea-going people were short of money about that time, or were short of faith and preferred cork jackets, I don't know. All I know is that there was but one solitary bidding, and that was from an attorney connected with the bill broking business, who offered £2 in cash and the balance in sherry, but declined to be guaranteed from drowning on any higher bargain. Consequently, the advertisement was withdrawn at a dead loss. For as to sherry, my poor dear mother's own sherry was in the market then, and 10 years afterwards, the call was put up in a raffle down in our part of the country to 50 members at £0.50 a head, the winner to spend 5 shillings. Anyway, the purpose of reading this to you is to say, here we are, faced with this conscious illusion of birth. There is a birth, but there's also an emphasis on the illusoriness of it all. As he says, to begin my life with the beginning of my life, I record that I was born as I have been informed and believe. This is in brackets. He is trying to tell us that he is writing a fiction. There's this sense of an illusion, which I think is wonderful. And there's this sort of self-mockery, which is also taking place, which is, I think, magnificent as well. This is actually a mockery of time, birth, death, life, everything. That's what it is. And he goes on to speak marvelously about his father and his grave, and how he can't bear that his father's out there in the cold, and he wants to reach out to him, the dead father. So it's very moving, it's very wonderful. But this takes us on to, I will come to Salinger in a minute, but I would ask you to bear with me. We don't have that much time, unfortunately, because we waited that so long for others to come. I will, however, read you, which also establishes what I'm trying to say about the start of a novel being very important and expressing this sense of turmoil, ecstasy, or terror, here we are. I was born in the city, this is Rushdie, Midnight's Children, a magnificent opening, albeit I mean, the rest of the novel really sort of rambled a hell of a lot. I don't think it's quite the masterpiece that it was made out to be. It was certainly very exciting at the time. I was born in the city of Bombay once upon a time. No, that won't do. There's no getting away from the date. I was born in Dr. Narlikar's nursing home on August 15th, 1947. And the time matters too. Well then, at night. No, it's important to be more on the stroke of midnight, as a matter of fact. Clock hands, joined palms in respectful greeting as I came. Oh, spell it out at the precise instant of India's arrival at independence. I tumbled forth into the world. There were gasps, and outside the window fireworks and crowds. A few seconds later, my father broke his big toe. But his accident was a mere trifle when set beside what had befallen me in that benighted moment, because thanks to the occult tyrannies of those blandly saluting clocks, I had been mysteriously handcuffed to history. My destinies indissolubly chained to those of my country. For the next 3 decades, there was to be no escape. Soothsayers had prophesied me. Newspapers celebrated my arrival. Politicos ratified my authenticity. I was left entirely without a say in the matter. I, Salim Sinai, later variously called Snot-Nose, Stained-Face, Baldy, Sniffer, Buddha, and even Piece of the Moon, had become heavily embroiled in fate. At the best of times, a dangerous sort of involvement. And I couldn't even wipe my own nose at the time. I think that's a magnificent opening, and I think you will agree, you know, there are a few openings to match the opening. It's a very dramatic, very compelling moment, and that phrase, there's so many phrases, but handcuffed to history is simply superb. And the thing about the clocks, about time, destiny, it's all there. The whole thing, the theme of destiny comes across very, very, very powerfully. And I think we need to bear that in mind. And so this, again, this is a moment of ecstasy in Rushdie. So my thesis that writing starts off in these different ways. We have a kind of euphoria even in Jane Austen's Emma. I don't have that much time, you know, to read everything out, but there's a euphoria which people haven't actually identified so far. But there is this extraordinary moment of euphoria, which I think we need to bear in mind. Anyway, so we've done that. Now I'm going to move on to Salinger. I had intended to talk about him, and I hope it'll be interesting for you. I don't know how many of you have actually read Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. You have. How many others have read Catcher in the Rye? Oh, we've got quite a few. Good, good, good. That's great, that's great. Tremendous. I don't know about Paul McCartney's song, okay. But anyway, Catcher in the Rye is magnificent. It's not rightly, as a friend of mine said the other day to me, she said it's not, she's not here today unfortunately, she said it's not a Bildungsroman, which is a coming-of-age novel. It's not that, it's much more than that. And yes, it has been taken as a coming-of-age novel about a rebellious, alienated,